Since you were not able to join us earlier, I was wondering if I could get your opinion uh, on whether or not there really is a way to improve or repair relations between the police and the public.
Uh, I can speak to. Let me start with what they've tried to do here in New York, and to the extent to which that's succeeded or failed, because the NYPD is notorious for having very poor relations with the public.
Oh, stop and frisk is an example of that.
Okay, so I'm old enough to remember when there was the last time that there was a big public outcry against police shootings in the 90s when Amadou Diallo, a Somali immigrant, was shot, 26 times by like 4 cops in the Bronx. Sorry, am I echoing?
A little bit, but you're fine.
Oh, okay. So there was a big public outcry. The mayor at the time was Mayor Giuliani, and his response was something called CPR, and it was like a revision of public relations between police and marginalized neighborhoods where there had been a lot of tension over those kind of shootings going down. and it worked for a period of time, and then Mayor Bloomberg succeeded Mayor Giuliani, and Bloomberg amped up the stop and frisk policy. And the stop and frisk policy enabled a lot of randomized searches of civilians in marginalized neighborhoods who already had a sense of distrust for the police department. It didn't help that they could just be stopped at random and checked for A, B, and C. Recently, Mayor de Blasio, who succeeded Bloomberg, stopped the stop and frisk policy completely. And it has affected public relations between the police and the people in the neighborhoods. If we were going to, BLM aside, because of course I support BLM, I endorse BLM, the most basic thing we need to start with is reestablishing trust. The police have to ease up, kind of, and I think it will help the civilians to come to a more trustful place with the police. That's the first step before any gun regulation or any of that stuff. We need to work on trust with the police for the communities and for the communities for the police.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. It seems Pod is gone.
Yeah, he might have got cut off, I guess.
Okay.
Because he just suddenly strobed out. I mean, we obviously look. If I talk about the number one policy for me when people talk about police brutality, you need to disarm cops. That needs to stop. That needs to go away completely. Unless you have like a SWAT team or something that comes in a very extreme emergency, beat cops need to not carry deadly weapons.
Man, I wish you could have been on earlier.
Yeah, no.
Sorry,
I understand the idea that they're not there to punish a crime that deserves a deadly response.
Mm-hmm.
But they, at the same time, are also there to punish people, some of which might not respond kindly to said punishment.
I mean, I would take, for example, in Norway, right? Cops have guns, but the gun is in the car, and they have protocols for they don't go for the gun, like it's not on their person. So if something escalates, they just go back to the car, open a lockbox, and take out a gun because it's escalated.
What if something escalates to the point where the other guy pulls out a gun?
There needs to be a disarming on both ends, right? There needs to be and I'm talking about criminals. You know what I'm saying? Like we need to create an environment where guns are less accessible to criminals, and we need to create an environment where cops at least have some kind of pause, even if it's just keeping the gun in the car during the first pass, right? Like the first encounter they have with like someone like Ethan Ralph, and he gets up and they're gonna.
You get that first encounter, and the guy pulls a gun during that first encounter, and the cop without a gun is fucked.
we've tried having cops armed at all times, and it doesn't seem to be working out now.
I can entirely agree with you. There
are a lot of
are doing their jobs very poorly, shooting people that do not deserve to be shot.
How do they do it in Canada?
In Canada, our cops are armed. I guess maybe our cops are just less likely to shoot. But our cops do have guns on them.
You guys don't have a shooting problem up there? I mean, in terms of police?
Not really.
Is it do you think it's a training thing? Because the thing is, we tried training in New York, and it didn't do much.
No, I think a big issue in your country is that there's not enough mental evaluation for your police officers.
I think that's a fair statement.
I think the rest of you might disagree with me on this. Bronx probably will. This is one of the more leftist ideals that I have. Mm-hmm. But you should be excluded from being a police officer if you are shown to be racist or transphobic or anything like that.
You are.
Because that means you are if it's proven to a certain degree. I mean, when it shows up in the early fucking stages, you should be kicked the fuck out.
Yeah.
Because you're going to do your job wrong at that, not here.
No. In America, in actually several places, at least here on the west side of America, most police departments will kick you out of the academy, will kick you out of the force if you show signs of racism, homophobia, transphobia, or all that stuff. If you basically are going to discriminate against somebody based on their physical appearance or based on their sexual orientation, whatever the case is, you will be kicked out.
And
however,
that's exactly how it should be, because that's proof that you'll do the job wrong.
Yeah, and that's exactly. I had several buddies through my own personal work experiences. Several of them actually were going to become cops. One of them actually is a former cop. No, two of them were, and they all pretty much said the exact same thing. If there was any possibility that this person that they were testing that wanted to become a cop, that wanted to wear the badge and wield a gun and all that stuff, there was any possibility of them being a racist, even if you just don't like gay people, they might be willing to bend on that just slightly.
No, see, even something like that, you're gonna perform your job wrong.
No, yeah, and like I said, when it came to the whole thing, it was primarily racism, and that's because here in the Southwest, we have
obviously
so many
that's pretty fucking common there.
Yeah, because it's a mixture of so many different people. It isn't just Asian people, it's black people, it's Mexican people, it's so many different cultures. I think that's one of the benefits that the Southwest really does have over, I would say, the Northeast or the Southeast or even the Northwest. We have so much mixture in the Southwest that it's really hard to actually if you see a cop fucking up, he really fucked up.
Well, that comes down to vetting and training. I think that the statistic was that the average cop in the United States of America has 4 weeks or 6 weeks less training than the average cop. Yeah, right. It's a very low number compared to other countries that have less police shootings, where they just have more training. I guess that's better vetting too.
I actually
that I think is the thing. It's not so much the training. It's been proven time and time again that American police, specifically like New York police, big city police, are better trained than most of our cops.
Sure.
No, I think it's like you said, better vetting.
Yeah. Yeah. If they got 8 weeks to fuck up, if they got 8 weeks to fuck up, it's much easier to catch people than if they've got 4 weeks to fuck up.
Exactly.
I actually had a conversation about this with somebody I was for a while associated with, but I actually think that it isn't just a vetting thing. I do believe that, yes, stronger vetting, better vetting, especially from coast to coast. But I also think the training does need to be improved just slightly, not necessarily in the sense that like they need longer training or anything like that, but more on the scale of military training. Only because there's a story that a former Marine and cop told me once where basically soldiers will not act unless ordered to. The properly trained best soldiers out there will not act unless ordered to. They will not break leather, which is essentially pulling their gun, unless it is the absolute last resort. Some of the best cops out there are actually former military. And it's because they already had specific rigorous training that kept them from being so terrified of, like, you know, people on the street or whatever the case was and such. So I'm just saying, like, I think the training doesn't necessarily need to be extended. It's just they need to rework it, because clearly there are several cops out there that have really good training, but there are areas they are weak in. And in the military, you can't have weakness. If you're artillery, you're artillery. You're not going to be trained in anything else except for maybe hand-to-hand combat and CQC. But even then, it's probably not going to be much of a training
Jesus
there.
Christ, I wish Pod was still here.
Why? Oh,
in the military, you can't have weakness.
I wouldn't say. No, I'm saying, like, depending on what your training is. If your job is to protect and serve, you're going to be protecting and serving.
Oh, yeah, you can't be shit at your job.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
I think that applies to basically any job ever.
Oh, it should, but trust me, there's plenty of people in warehouses that don't know what the fuck they're doing that still get the damn job anyways.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The ex-military credentials, a little, you know, it can cut both ways, because a lot of guys come out of the military with a lot of baggage that can play out when they're put back into a violent situation. You know, that can also, it's not. I'm not debunking your point or whatever, but I'm just saying that it's also, that can cut the other way, where somebody comes out of the military could be mentally less capable in a violent situation.
There are specific people from the military that you wouldn't want as cops. But
No, I get what
you think that you go through enough mental evaluation to become a cop that they would test for pre-existing PTSD.
See, earlier on the stream that we had Danny Duchamp on, and I think it would have been very interesting hearing Bronx blogger argue against him, because he was arguing for a privatization of police/military.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's a terrible fucking idea.
With that too.
Yeah, that's a bad
way.
idea.
I mean, like, we've seen what it's done to the military, and you know, I again, my political positions aside, I'm from a military family, and we have a lot of people, and they've talked about nightmares dealing with private soldiers and private military contractors. Like, it's nightmarish. I wouldn't bring that. That's.
I have a little less of a personal connection. It just seems. It seems like a bad idea to put policing in the hands of private companies, because then it becomes a for-profit thing.
That's right. Yeah, with like for-profit prisons haven't gone that well either.
No, exactly. That's basically the example we have to go on, is for-profit prisons.
Yeah.
It's not a good way to go. It's been proven to be a bad way to go.
Yeah. Public services need to be public. And there's still
not even fucking public services need to be public. When it comes to people that are being imprisoned for laws that are made by the state,
that's right.
The state should deal with them.
Yeah. If a company is making money off of arrests, you're going to see arrests skyrocket, and you're going to see jail time skyrocket, just because they're getting paid by. If they're getting paid by the cuff, you're going to see people going to jail for bullshit.
Well, we already have, to a degree, the same issue with the often denied quotas.
That's right.
You don't want to make that to the point where they're literally getting paid per arrest.
Not Pod. Dolphin was talking about that being an argument for privatized rather than public.
That makes it way worse. I mean, we're talking about people's freedom here. This isn't like how many donuts you sold today. If you get paid by the number of time you fucking take someone's freedom away for stupid bullshit, like, you know, that's there's no, for me, there's no ethics that work in that situation.
Well, it's not even that. You are kind of phrasing it in a biased fashion.
Sure.
It's not so much that you'd be being arrested for whatever stupid shit they decided. You'd be arrested for crimes, but
Allegedly.
they would get to decide, you know, what constituted that, essentially. Never mind the fact that you'd be getting hit for the tiny crimes, because again, they're being paid per arrest. You'd be hit for like jaywalking, shit
That's
like
right.
that. But eventually, you know, they need to find a way to make more money, right? And suddenly you get, yeah, we caught this guy doing et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the fact that he was just walking down the road.
Mm-hmm.
When you privatize shit, when you make it so that it's not government oversight, but private, corporate, money-hungry oversight, you're gonna get people abusing shit. And you don't want that when it's the legal system.
And that's not to mention that being a cop is one of the few. I mean, myself coming from the inner city, and again, you know, I'm obviously not pro cop necessarily, but being a cop or a teacher is like the only livable job that you can get in the inner city to feed kids, and then for that to be privatized and you know, a union busted and stuff, that'd be completely fucked up.
Yeah, there's the whole economic aspect where it might affect low-income people being able to get the job, but I feel like that's a symptom more of fuck, I can't even think of the words. It's more.
It's more emblematic of the problem within the system than a solution to the system itself.
There we go.
That's right.
It's more an issue with a stigma against the poor, which I can't say is entirely unfounded 100% of the time, but it's more to do with that than with anything that might arise from these particular changes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm really glad that I was able to get that, and I will. Hopefully we'll be able to like edit this stream down into that part of the stream being the discussion of it, because I think that it's important to get that added argument one way or the other.
What's Duchamp's deal? Is he a libertarian or ANCAP? What is he?
Well, Danny Duchamp is, I think, an ANCAP or close to the point where it becomes
think that's what he's
indistinguishable. And Politipod is, I think, just a garden variety conservative.
Politipod's a pretty basic, yeah, like you said, basic conservative.
Yeah, I know Sammy's politics. I was wondering about Duchamp. I'm aware of Duchamp, but I wasn't sure what his.
I think he's just a libertarian, but he does kind of lean a little bit ANCAP at times.
Yeah, that's an ANCAP sounding idea.
Danny's a little out there on some things.
He's certainly an interesting guy to talk to, and I do enjoy my interactions with him.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a good guy, a lot of fun. There are just some things we certainly disagree on. Yeah,
he's in
some things where he's a little out there.
He's in New Zealand, right?
Yeah, he's a Kiwi.
Yeah.
How do the I know a few New Zealanders. I wonder if their police force is armed.
I think it is, but I can look.
New Zealand, no idea.
Because realistically, every police force is armed. It's just that in certain areas, they're armed with more billy clubs and mace instead of actual firearms.
Yeah. Oh, come on. That's not actually fucking armed.
They do not.
It is. Have you ever been hit by a billy club? I have. It hurts.
Bro, at any given time, I am carrying something heavier than a billy club.
So the New Zealand police force do not routinely carry firearms. They only carry OC spray, batons, and tasers.
See, non-lethal. So to me, that's a better system than what we've got. Maybe it's not best for every city and every district, but I think if we're having a problem with people getting shot up, we should at least look at non-lethals in a constructive way in certain areas that are low crime or something.
I think we should definitely look at non-lethal solutions. I think that we need to look at non-lethal solutions beyond what we already have.
Yeah.
Find fucking safe for human tranquilizer darts.
Yeah.
That doesn't cause addiction.
Those do actually exist. It's just that they're considered unethical.
How the fuck are they unethical?
Don't ask me, dude. Otherwise, we would actually have a bunch of
it seems incredibly safe. Hey, instead of being dead, you're just knocked out for a couple hours. You're welcome, by the way.
I think it's because of the side effects it can have. It's considered unethical.
You know what? Are those side effects better than death?
You got to be careful because, for example, I know that LAPD made a lot of shift towards taser, and Oakland PD made a shift toward taser, and they're still having problems because people are not being properly trained on how to use taser, and people are dying from heart attacks and strokes because they got hit with the taser too long, or the shock was getting
too high. A lot of people don't realize a taser, if used improperly, can kill the fuck out of you.
That's right. Yeah. It's extremely dangerous for a non-lethal weapon.
Yeah, you don't know. It's a non-lethal weapon that can very easily be lethal.
Right, and I think that would be the problem with tranquilizer is that if we're fucking up voltage, then your average cop might fuck up dosage on a tranquilizer.
You make it so that the fucking tranquilizer darts or whatever the fuck you use are set for a small person. You make it so worst case scenario, they fail.
Right.
That can still be abused because you could always still have that asshole cop who decides to pump them a few more times.
Yeah.
Dude, you can take anything.
It still beats bullets.
You can take anything.
I would still rather have tranquilizer darts shot into me than fucking bullets.
I was less destructive than bullets.
I would rather overdose on fucking bear tranquilizer or whatever the fuck they use than just have multiple hot bullets go through me.
No one's disagreeing with you, you fucking weirdo. I'm just basically saying you can take any fucking non-lethal use of force and make it lethal.
I guess my last minute plugs. Go watch the debate. We just had one last Friday about college. And then last Wednesday, I hosted the Brain Trust because our esteemed host of the show, Dolphin Radio, had fallen ill. So if you haven't checked those out, please do so. And also, please subscribe to our channels and follow us all on Twitter.